Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week I wanted to talk about the idea of stealing versus inspiration. Which is to say, I am working on this dark jazz album, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, but I also am finding myself taking a lot of inspiration from other dark jazz albums, specifically Bohan and Der Club of Gore's Black Earth, which I'm sure I've mentioned before, and I'm slightly obsessed with it. But I feel that there are definitely limitations on how you can approach like stealing something versus being inspired by it. And a lot of this I feel is your own personal comfort level, but I also think that there are things that you can lift from other pieces of work that don't necessarily count as like plagiarism. Like you can't, despite the record industry's attempts at it, you can't patent a chord progression. You can't really patent like a melody in the same way. Like if you make things obvious, then yes, but you can definitely get away with a lot by being inspired by what already exists in the world. And honestly, I feel that a lot of your style and a lot of your personal like expression comes from just the things that you like to experience. Where in my case, I've been listening to a lot of dark jazz, and that's definitely influenced this album. And I've taken things like the structure of a song where it has like this slow build up, and then it has like the introduction of different instruments throughout this build up, and then there's a pause, there's a gap, and then it brings in like the main solo instrument. And that is a formula that I kind of figured out while listening to these other albums, and I've used that formula, I've implemented that formula in my songs. And I don't feel in any way that that is theft, because that is essentially how to arrange a style of music, not necessarily how to, make this particular group's style of music, but it's how to arrange a genre. And I think that that's really kind of where the gray area comes in, because it's easy to feel that, well, if I do this, and this, then I'll sound like this artist. However, if I just do the first three of those, then I'll just sound like this genre. And I feel that it's important to find that limitation or find that like threshold where it becomes more imitating an already existing artist rather than expressing your work through the lens of a different genre. And it's really hard. Like I mentioned before, it's a bit of a comfort level thing, but I also feel that it's just something that you get used to as you go on, because when you start out, it's so easy to be like, I'm going to be 100% original. I'm never going to be inspired by anybody. Like everything I do is going to be mine and mine alone. And I feel that that's a really dangerous trap to fall in, because it's so easy to just, what's the word I'm looking for? It's so easy to just feel like independent and like that you're going to invent a new genre of music, and you get mired in trying to be original. And I feel a lot of originality comes through the process of figuring out your own style. And everybody has their own style because everybody has their own tastes and their own experiences. And that's just how that stuff kind of forms over time. You can't force building a style. It's something that has to be essentially kind of burned into your mind as you create things, as you fail, as you find out what workflows work well for you. And like all of this stuff comes together into your style and puts your works specifically on the map. And once you start copying other people's style, I feel that that's where you start to fall into the theft or plagiarism kind of camp. And it's, I don't know, like I've been making this album, and as I'm writing this stuff, I'm like, is this too close to like this song on this album, or is this like outright copying something that they did just because I like the way it sounded? And I guess to some degree I am a little, not skeptical, but I'm a little nervous about like people being like, oh well, he just stole that outright. But I don't really feel that people are going to think that way when they hear the album as a whole. Partially because I feel that the dark jazz albums that I've been listening to aren't exactly well known, which isn't me saying was like, oh, I've listened to these people before they were popular. It's like, that's not the thing. Like, I feel that if anything, I might be able to introduce some people to some of the better dark jazz albums out there. Like people will listen to this and I'd be like, well, if you like this, you should really listen to what it was inspired by. And I am in no way holding a candle to Black Earth or some of the other albums out there, but it's one of those things where it's like, hopefully I can at least bring more people into the fold of this style of music. I don't know, I kind of lost my train of thought on this. Like this is a much shorter episode, I guess, because really it's difficult for me to, and I don't think there really is a solid definition of that. Like I said, the record industry have been trying to create definitions for this for a while, but it's just like you can't really quantify art in that way, where it's just like, yeah, you can make a painting or a photo, and it's just like, well, you can't patent that. Like everybody has their own approach. Everybody has their own way of expressing that kind of art. And there's no real way to, copyright it or patent it unless it's explicitly obvious, where it's like copying the chord progression and the melody and the tempo and the rhythm and all that other stuff. It's like there's definitely limits, but there's no threshold in law or anything like that. It's all kind of personal preference, and it really depends on the artists who made it and their litigation capabilities, I guess. I don't know. I went into this episode thinking that I had a lot to say, but really I guess that's it. I'm super excited to keep working on this dark jazz album. I'm really excited to see where this is going, and I'm very happy with what I've put together so far. There's a lot of work left to do, but I am really pleased with the kind of mood that I've been gathering with it. And really the mood is the biggest thing for me, because like when I listen to Black Earth, it's not an oppressive mood, even though it's like called dark jazz or doom jazz. It's like, for me, it's not an oppressive style. It's something like a warm blanket on a cold day where you just kind of wrap yourself up in it. And it's just so lovely to listen to because of that. And I feel like I've captured that feeling, and that's really where I'm most happy with that. And I think maybe that's where I feel like I should be with inspiration versus plagiarism, where it's not necessarily copying the chords or the melodies or the arrangement. It's copying the feeling. And that feeling is what really you should look forward to. Not forward to. The feeling is really what you should strive for copying, because you can't really patent a feeling. I don't know. This is me figuring it out live, I guess, because I kind of am just trying to figure out this whole thing. And this is kind of my thought process in general. It's very random, and I apologize. This episode's a little wonky, but yeah, I think that if you're looking to be inspired by something, you should focus on the feeling that it has, the feeling that it makes you feel, rather than like, well, this is a 2-5-1 chord progression with a 7th chord, and it's like that stuff is a little bit more irrelevant to the point of just trying to capture that feeling. And yeah, there is some technical knowledge that needs to happen to get that, but I think the technical stuff happens because like the music theory is flexible in that regard, or the artistic theory, whichever medium it is. Like you can recreate something, you can recreate a mood without recreating the theory or the logistics that go behind it. So I don't know. I kind of ran out of steam on this one. it's a really interesting idea, and maybe I'll revisit it more when I have more thoughts on it. Yeah, that's really it. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, even if it's a little bit more rambly than usual. And I really hope that I hope you like this album when I put it out at the end of the month. I think it's going to be great. It's called The Moon Seems Unaffected. It's about kind of viewing the world slowly crumble apart from a position where you have very little power to do anything but watch it happen, which sounds really dour and really dark. And I guess at the beginning of the month, I was definitely in that place. And even though the world is a slightly brighter place after the elections, not to get political, but I still feel that there's a lot of things left to do. And I feel that, again, it's like wrapping a warm blanket around yourself and trying to feel safe in a world that is more or less kind of oppressive right now, whether that's the pandemic or the election results or what. There's so many things going on right now that can make you feel insecure. And I want to make something that makes you feel secure. It makes you feel a little warmer and a little safer. And I think that this album will help do that. So, yeah, I was all over the place in this recording. I hope that you have a good rest of the day. I hope you have a good rest of the week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you in the next one. Be remarkable.